Hello students, today we are going to discuss the concept of different types of vectors. Okay, so first of all we have equal vector. So let's see what is equal vector. When we have two vectors with same magnitude and direction, then we say that the vectors are equal vectors. Okay, let's take an example. Suppose we have a vector like this, say this is a vector, okay, and we have another vector like this, okay. So direction wise they are same and magnitude wise they are also same, so we can say that these vectors are equal vectors. Okay, so next we have the concept of unequal vector. So let's see what is unequal vector. Suppose we have a vector like this, say we have a vector like this, say this is a vector, and say we have another vector like this, okay. So here you can see that the direction of both the vectors are same, but magnitude wise they are different. So here a vector and b vector are said to be unequal in nature. Okay, let's take another example. Suppose we have a vector like this, say this is c vector, and we have a vector say d vector like this, okay. So here you can see that the c vector and d vector, they have same magnitude, but direction wise they are different. So here we can say that this c vector and d vectors are unequal in nature. Okay, let's take another example. Suppose we have a vector like this, say this is e vector, and we have a vector like this, say this is f vector. So here you can see that e vector and f vector have different directions as well as their magnitude is also different. So here these two vectors are also called unequal vectors. Okay, so our next concept is parallel vector. So let's see what is parallel vector. So parallel vector. So what is parallel vector? Okay, let's take an example. Suppose we have a vector like this, say this is a vector, okay, and we have another vector like this, say this is b vector. Here you can see that the angle between these two vectors is 0 degree. So here angle between these two vectors is 0 degree. So that's why they are called parallel vector, though their magnitudes are different. Okay, so these two vectors are parallel vectors when the angle between them is 0 degree. Okay, okay, we can take another example here. Suppose we have another vector, say c. Okay, so here you can see that a vector, b vector and c vector, these three are parallel to each other because angle between them is 0 degree. So this is the essential criteria here. Okay, so this is called parallel vector. Next we have anti-parallel vector. So what is anti-parallel vector? Let's see. So anti-parallel vector means suppose we have a vector like this, say we have a vector a and we have another vector like say b. Okay, so here you can see that this a vector and b vector magnitude wise they are different, but the angle between them is 180 degree, right? So here these two vectors, a vector and b vectors, are called anti-parallel vectors. Okay, so next we have the concept of collinear vector. Okay, so let's see what is collinear vector. So this is very important, collinear vector. Okay, collinear vector means suppose we have a vector like this, say we have a vector and say we have another vector like this. So here you can see that these two vectors lying on the same line. Okay, we can take another one, say this is c vector. So here a, b and c, these three are lying along the same line. So these three are also called collinear vector. Okay, suppose we have a vector like this, say c vector, and say we have another vector like this, say this is d vector. Okay, so in this particular example, here you can see that c vector and d vector, these two are anti-parallel to each other, right? And these two are also called collinear. So when we have two vectors anti-parallel to each other, then also the vectors are said to be collinear. Okay, let's take another example. Suppose we have a vector like this, say this is e vector, and say we have another vector like this, say f vector. Okay, their magnitudes are different, but direction wise they have same direction. So these two are parallel vectors. Again, e vector and f vectors are collinear to each other. So if we have 3 or 4 vectors which are along the same line, then also we say that the vectors are collinear. Or if we have two vectors which are anti-parallel to each other or parallel to each other, then also we say that the vectors are collinear. Okay, so next we have concurrent vector. Okay, so let's see what is concurrent vector. So it is concurrent vector. So what is concurrent vector? Suppose we have three vectors like this. Say we have a vector f1, we have another vector say f2, and we have another vector say f3. Okay, so here you can see that these three vectors are passing through a same point. Okay, so that's why these vectors are called concurrent vectors. So here f1, f2 and f3 are concurrent vectors. Okay, next we have another concept that is called zero vector. So this is very important. So what is zero vector? Let's see. Vector with magnitude 0, it is called zero vector. Okay, let's take an example. Suppose here we have an object and say it is moving with uniform velocity v. Okay, so its acceleration will be 0. When a body is moving with uniform velocity, its acceleration will be 0, and acceleration is a vector quantity, right? So obviously this is the example of zero vector, right? So zero vector can take any direction, but its magnitude is always 0. Okay, let's take another example. Suppose here we have an object and say 5 Newton force is applied from left to right and another 5 Newton force is applied from right to left. Okay, so here the net force acting on this object is 0, right? So force is a vector quantity. Again, this is the example of zero vector, right? So a vector with magnitude 0 is called zero vector and it can take any direction, right? Please remember this. And our final one is unit vector. So let's see what is unit vector. So unit vector means a vector with magnitude 1. It is called unit vector. Okay, suppose we have a vector like this. Say we have a vector like this and we have to find the unit vector in the direction of a. Say it is a cap. A cap is the unit vector in the direction of a, say. So a cap will be actual vector divided by the value or magnitude of the given vector, right? So this is the relation you have to know. Unit vector in the direction of a, it is nothing but actual vector divided by magnitude of the vector. Okay, in this way we can define the unit vectors along x-axis. Suppose this is x-axis, we have unit vector along x-axis, it is denoted by I cap. We have unit vector along y-axis also, it is denoted by j cap, and we have unit vector along z-axis also, it is denoted by k cap. Okay, so I cap, j cap and k cap, these are the unit vectors. I cap, j cap and k cap, these are the unit vectors along x-axis, along y-axis and along z-axis respectively. Okay, again I am repeating, this is I cap, this is the unit vector along x-axis, j cap, this is the unit vector along y-axis, and k cap, this is another unit vector along z-axis. Okay, they have a magnitude 1 but their directions are different and they are mutually perpendicular to each other, right? Okay, so next we have another type of vector that is called coplanar vector. Okay, let's see what is coplanar vector. It is coplanar vector. Okay, it's very simple to define. Suppose we have 2 or 3 vectors like this. Say we have a vector, we have b vector, okay, and say we have another vector like this. Say this is c vector. Okay, here you can see that all these vectors are lying on the same plane, that is on the page, right? So here these 3 vectors are called coplanar vectors as they are lying on the same plane or on the plane of the page. Okay, so that's why ABC are called coplanar vectors. Okay, so in this way we can define different types of vectors. Thank you.